and they serve as usage guides. The usage strictures are in large part orthographically based, and some are no doubt carryovers from the pre-war days, northern textbooks, and undoubtedly cribbed from those books as well. And I've provided in number 10 in the handout a list of many of the features that are identified for correction, about which I'll just offer some brief comments here. In this list, we see a number of hallmark features of Southern American English. We find perhaps the most common feature for correction is the R. It may be that R-lessness was prestigious in some parts of the American South or the American Southern population, but it was routinely singled out for correction by these textbooks. And it's not just to pronounce the R, as I give you in A1, in words like matter and mother and so on, but it's to avoid the intrusive R. So, for instance, one author says, there is one error which, if possible, is still more shocking. It is the introduction at the end of these unaccented finals, as words such as follow, of the letter R, that unhappy letter that is never where it ought to be, and too often where it ought not to be. Thus, you have heard people say, as yeller as gold, a large winder, to follow a person, etc., etc. I beseech you, dear children, not to follow their example. So we can group these particular features perhaps according to what Guy and his colleagues have identified as the changes that were in existence at the time of the beginning of their third period, that is 1880, and those which had not yet appeared. So, for instance, we have in 4C, which is something that was, according to their taxonomy, in existence. A number of these textbooks single out the diphthongization of all as owl in words like dog, doll, and so on for correction. For D, the alveolar glide before U is frequently mentioned, so that one writer points out that flute, we need a flute actually has the glide there, not flute, nor yet fleute, and so on. The word duty must be pronounced duty. It is not duty or Judy. F, we have monophthongal I, or at least something with regard to I. The rather idiosyncratic transcription here is not something that I've been able to puzzle out yet, but for instance, one writer says, exact the pure sound of the vowels also. Fine, not fine, or whatever that particular form that is being corrected is. I'm not entirely sure. Give to each vowel its proper sound. Night, light, right, not night, right, or right. Or maybe it's not, right, or light. This could possibly be a correction for the monophthongal I, which, according to Bailey et al., was only very incipient at that particular time. Maybe one more feature to comment on, K, the merger of and I There's at least one author who points this out. Do not say again with the sound of short I, but say again against. And I take this as indicating that the again pronunciation with the short I, with the S sound, is in fact prevalent and had been, and therefore it was salient enough for correction. There's a section in one of these writers that's particularly intriguing. It's what she calls Africanisms. Before advancing any further in the study of elocution, we must call to the attention of our little learners to some very common colloquial errors, which, for want of a more scientific name, we call Africanisms. And the follow bear so little resemblance to these for which they are substitutes that we will treat them as grammatical barbarisms and translate them into English. And so what we see here are familiar pronunciations of this and that, for this and that, both for both, and so on. So these writers were interested not only in correcting general features of colloquial English, or those features that are perceived to be Southern in the speech of the school children, but also those features which are thought to be influenced by the African American population in their midst. Now, there's much more that could be said about these particular features, and certainly a long paper, maybe even a master's thesis, could be done on these Confederate textbooks and their usage advice. I take it as a given that if a particular pronunciation or grammatical usage, there's lots of grammatical advice in these books as well. I haven't collated here, but I take it as a given that if these features are identified for correction in 1861, that they would have been around for a generation or maybe two generations. So I think on that count alone, we need to push back the beginning date of many of these sound changes in Southern American English and the date of the formation of Southern American English as we know it today. So as a quick summation, we've looked at South Carolina, at some of the very early period patterns, the kind of input, grammatical input that came into South Carolina, the varieties that were in contact, and that led to new dialect formation on the ground. But we've also looked at Confederate textbooks, which show us that there's an ideology here that Southerners are aware, and perhaps increasingly aware of the time of the Civil War, that they speak their own kind of English, and that school teachers need to correct this, whatever its source, whether it's not paying attention to the orthography of words, whether it's influences from certain elements of the population, or whatever. Southerners are conscious that a variety of Southern American English is there on the ground in 1861, and school teachers need to do something about it. So I've introduced at least two types of historical text here that I think can answer this question, or at least go a long way toward it. When did Southern English begin? I think it began a little earlier than the conventional wisdom suggests. Thank you very much.